This is the Zagato Gavia, and it's one of the coolest JDM cars you've never heard of. It's quite a peculiar one, and I'm not just talking about the unique aesthetics, but also the story behind it. Today, I'm going to be telling you all about it. To start this story, we need to go back to the 80s. At the end of the decade, Japan was coming out with all kinds of groundbreaking cars, throwing tech and innovations in just about every car they produced. From luxury cars such as the first Lexus LS to daily supercars like the original Honda NSX. Flush with cash, and after recently founding their tuning department Autech, Nissan reached out to the legendary coach builder Zagato, renowned for designing some of the most beautiful cars in the world. Nissan Autech was going to work on the stuff they were good at, such as engines and running gear, while Zagato would work their magic on the design. But there was one small issue. Nissan intended the Gavia to be for the Japanese market only, and well, Zagato is actually an Italian brand, and they knew their Eurocentric styling wouldn't go down well on the other side of the globe. So what did they do? They pilfered a bunch of parts from existing Japanese cars. For instance, they took the chassis from a Nissan Leopard, the headlights from an S13, and the wing mirrors from a Honda CRX Del Sol. They wrapped it all up in their own Italian designed aluminium body, which is probably why it looks just a little bit like an Alfa Romeo SZ. In fact, they designed this car too. I think it's interesting to compare them both side by side. At a first glance, they look nothing alike, but they do share some subtle design cues, such as the bodyline that slopes from rear to front, the long headlights that are tucked under the bonnet, the lines that draw your attention to the grille, and the flat rear end. And this is no more apparent when compared to earlier renditions of Zagato's JDM prototypes, but more on those later. While I think both cars would have worked somewhat in Japan, it's obvious that the Gavia definitely looks more JDM. Overall, the Gavia is more refined, practical and subdued. You could easily see a businessman driving the Gavia, but the Alfa, not so much. But it doesn't end with the mostly gorgeous looks of the Gavia. Nissan Autech tuned and turbocharged a VG30 DET, the 3-litre engine from a 300ZX or Fairlady Z. It's stated that it produced around 280 to 300 horsepower, which was a lot for a production car back then. And it even had more than the supercar killer NSX by some 10 horsepower, although it was almost double the price of the NSX, due to the rarity and high-tech nature. Because of this, it was a little bit slower off the line, but in terms of top speed, strangely it can breeze past the supercar killer. So on paper, we have a cool JDM car with some considerable quirks and features. So why has nobody heard of it? But before we get onto that, let me take up 5 seconds of this video to ask you to like and subscribe if you're enjoying so far. Thank you. While there isn't much information out there about the project anymore, we can surely piece together what went wrong. Something I haven't touched on yet is that this isn't even Autech and Zagato's first collaboration. Previously, they made the similar yet more flamboyant Stelvio as a prototype car. With its more radical design, it's clear that Nissan Autech didn't want to put the Stelvio into production, purely because it was too polarizing. I'd be interested to know which one you prefer in the comments. Honestly, I think I prefer the Gavia over the Stelvio. Zagato had a bunch of parts left over from their first failed attempt, so they set off making a second reformed iteration, the Gavia. But clearly, Autech wasn't a fan of the overall design. Whether it's because they simply didn't like it, or it used a bunch of parts from rival companies, or they simply thought it wouldn't sell in the JDM. We shall never know. So why am I making a video about an obscure concept car that didn't even make it to production? Does it actually exist? While Nissan Autech didn't pick up the car for a full production run, Zagato did manage to get a few out of their production line in Milan. Zagato is a coach builder, meaning they build all their cars by hand. So the process was painfully slow. As a result, there are only ever 16 Gavias ever built, making this one of the rarest cars in the world. Nobody is entirely sure how many are left, but we know for a fact that only 4 remain in Japan. I'm sure if this car ever made it to the Nissan production line, it would have been a success. It's a shame that it didn't, because it's a beautiful car that has a decent amount of power under the hood. Who knows? Maybe in an alternate universe, the Gavia joined the likes of the NSX, Supra and A86 in the history books of legendary Japanese cars. And that is all you need to know about the JDM car you've never heard of. And if you want to hear more of my annoying voice, make sure you click on this video in which I go through one of the greatest roads in the world that you probably haven't heard of.